turkey bacon, beaver, lettuce, and tomatoes with mayonnaise.
Radio Free Infinite, episode 205. Again, continuing with the theme of closely examining albums from bands I've already done overviews of on this channel. This week it's Goatmoon. I initially covered Black Goat's main solo project way back in episode 61 of this program, and honestly, listening back to it, that's a pretty decent episode, but there's one problem with it. I talked about pretty much every album on there except the fourth one, which in the loveliest language of all time is known as Voitto tai Valhalla, or Victory or Valhalla in English. It's a fun song title. But yeah, I kind of just skip over it in the episode, and it's a damn shame because... Okay, let me tell you the real reason I did that. That was the one album I didn't have at the time, alright? So I didn't know it that well. I just had like MP3s or fucking whatever. But yeah, kind of shameful skipping all that.
And I don't like that.
So we're gonna fix that. If you don't know much about Goatmoon, it's a one-man band from Finland. He was kind of discovered by Satanic Tyrant Werewolf, the guy behind the other big Finnish one-man black metal project, Satanic Warmaster, when he was playing drums for the Satanic Warmaster guy's heavy metal side project, Armor. And he's been consistently signed to Werewolf Records ever since then, playing what started out as very traditional-sounding black metal. On the debut album, but every album after that is he's kind of been doing something else. This album, Voitto tai Valhalla, falls distinctly within the realm of something else, and it may in fact be the crowning achievement of the something else period of Goatmoon's career. I mean, it's kind of hard to make that call. All of the something else albums are really fucking good. So here we go, Adventures in Goatmoon. That whole something else thing is kind of what makes Goatmoon such a unique project, because even as odd as later Goatmoon gets as far as black metal goes, it still has a very solid black metal core, but that core is heavily informed by elements of hard rock, punk rock, and folk music. And what makes Voitto tai Valhalla so special is how the album is structured. So every later Goatmoon album has a lot of thought kind of put into its layout and like the order that the songs happen in, but on Voitto tai Valhalla, that's like really, really obvious. Because each side of the record, if you have it on vinyl, it's kind of structured as its own little mini album where you'll have a few shorter, more traditional Goatmoon songs and then one really long one at the end of the side. And it is on side A that we find the core of what Goatmoon is, because there is a two-part title track that begins the album, Voitto tai Valhalla. Part 1 leans heavily into the kind of the hard rock and like melodic heavy metal influences, even more so than a lot of other Goatmoon songs. I mean, it starts out as this like very folky punk rack black metal thing with the very danceable folky flute line winding its way around the guitar riffs, but that section alternates back and forth with this very 80s heavy metal like harmonized guitar riff, like very new wave of British heavy metal sounding, and it's highly melodic, stadium rocking, palm muted proto thrash style. The soul of this part may be in the 80s, but the aesthetic is still decidedly black metal, and when he transitions to the next part, he goes full black metal with these like very grandiose chord hits, that kind of weird winding guitar melody. But don't you worry, because you're going to go back into the heavy metal seamlessly with this very sleazy guitar solo. This is the album where Goatmoon started really having a whole lot of this very impressive lead guitar stuff going on. Most of these solos are played by guests, but they fit right in the weird and eclectic world that Black Goat's songwriting has created. Speaking of weird and eclectic, check out these clean vocals. Okay, 80s stadium rock in full effect here. Very anthemic. And so it's interesting that he does all of this heavy metal stuff, which is like kind of half of the weird non-black metal influences going on in the Goatmoon equation. He does half of that in the title track part 1. The next song immediately afterward, the title track Voitto tai Valhalla part 2, is almost entirely devoted to the other half of Goatmoon's non-metal, well, not non-metal, but non-black metal influences. in that it leans very heavily into this like weird folky punk rock thing. It starts out with some slowly building layers of folk music. You have acoustic guitar, Jaws, harp, and drums. Then you start bringing in this hurdy-gurdy, eventually leading to more of that great flute that Goatmoon is pretty famous for. I mean, are they? I don't know. I feel like it kind of stands out in their sound. But this is all really just the build-up to the main riff of the song, which is entirely rhythmic, not melodic at all. It's just taking that folk cadence. But this very rhythmic bed of chords provides an effective vector for which one of the signature elements of Goatmoon's sound can travel through, that being very catchy, repetitive lead guitar. Not solos, just straight up leads, dude. The lead rhythm dichotomy is in full effect on this track. Once the vocals come in, you can see how he kind of varies the cadence from that more heavy metal stuff. Here he's singing directly with the music instead of across it like he was on that more heavy metal track. This is much more punk sounding. And it leads back into the flutes. And the boingers. Everybody likes the boingers. But don't you worry, dear black metal purist listener. It's not all just goofy 80s melodic hard rock and goofy folk punk. As I alluded to earlier, this album has a lot of thought put into its structure. The way it is structured is essentially sort of a collage of Goatmoon's various influences, maybe even more like a slideshow, like here's what it sounds like when we do hard rock, here's what it sounds like when we do weird folk punk. But, you know, Goatmoon is obviously influenced by black metal too, so there's gonna be tracks that are showing Goatmoon's take on traditional black metal. Very traditional black metal, at least on this riff. This is about as dark as Goatmoon gets. It's kind of unusual for them, but don't worry, it's gonna lighten up. And here we go, this like sweeping epic melodic black metal with that, again, trademark Goatmoon lead guitar riff. And these like really like sweeping synths, which are awesome on this album and would return on the one after it as well. This is super cool here, because this is kind of him taking the style riffs that he introduced on the album immediately preceding this one and really fleshing out the concept. These very consonant, layered, melodic tremolo riffs. Spooky black metal riff is back again as if to say, this is what we think old school black metal sounds like, and this is what we think Goatmoon sounds like when they play black metal. You know, it's an interesting pull-push dynamic. Big drum hit! Here's that same spooky riff, but instead of being all like nihilistic and dark, now it sort of has a triumphant cast to it. Interesting variation on that initial riff set. And it's a good way to tie those two aspects of the song together. This like very triumphant, melodic sort of black metal, and then the dark and spooky shit. And to round it off with a nice bow is some more of that great Goatmoon lead guitar that I love so much, and that is kind of like the band's trademark style. Even layering it up a bit, very folky, maybe a bit too pretty sounding for some, but I think it works nicely, leading back into some more of that great epic melodic stuff. So that's Goatmoon doing black metal. In fact, they are so committed to doing black metal that they even take a stab at some more traditional black metal songwriting forms. There's a thrashier, darker song towards the end of the album, much in the tradition of Satanic War Master doing that true blackness song on Karelian Satanist Madness, or even if you go farther back, Gorgoroth doing that Possessed by Satan song on the Antichrist album, where they kind of go back to like 80s style Bathory-ish black metal. But there's another song form that they experiment with on this release that I want to put a special spotlight on. So these guys, or I guess just one guy and then, you know, his session guitarists and drummers and whatnot, decide to take on the classic Burzum style songwriting form. Burzum is kind of interesting as far as black metal goes, and this is probably why a lot of people don't like Burzum. It's not very riff based. I mean, sure, there are some songs that Varg wrote with like big fucking black metal riffs in them. But So usually when you think of Burzum, it's not like a big riff-based band. It's more based on really, really long melodies, lots of layered guitar, and then moving those layers around for ambient effect. So it's kind of wacky to hear Goatmoon do their take on that style for one of this album's big, epic, 9-minute long side-ending tracks, given that Goatmoon is usually seen as a pretty riff-heavy band. So let's see what that sounds like. Well, it still sounds like Goatmoon, but in a much different form than we're used to hearing them in. The main melody of this track is entirely keyboard driven, with the guitars mostly there for sort of like textured effect. Also, the bass is pretty active in this track, especially once that keyboard drops out. It's really all about like the bass and the vocals kind of winding their way around this core of very washed out, ambient sounding guitar. Not what you would expect from Goatmoon at all, but they do it very well. And it's kind of cool that there's like this one different sounding Goatmoon song. You notice like when the keyboards dropped out back there, you could still kind of hear that melody ringing in your ears even when it wasn't really present. That's what I mean when this song is based pretty much around that keyboard melody. That's kind of like the main structural backbone. It usually fades out whenever the vocals come in. And then when the vocals leave, it comes back in to kind of redirect the song back towards its initial core. Now there are some nice kind of change-up type things going on. Like this right here where the guitar riff actually does change, kind of like pushing the song forward, while still remaining very repetitive and ambient. Like I mentioned earlier, the bass on this track is really cool, like very melodic and clean sounding. Stripping it down to nothing but that keyboard synthy backbone. Then bring the guitars back in, and it hits pretty darn hard. So as far as, Goatmoon dressing up in the Burzum costume, I think they probably won the cosplay convention with this one. Did a pretty damn good job of that kind of style. But this album isn't just them like, hey, we're going to try this, then we're going to try that. It's also got plenty of more traditional sounding Goatmoon stuff, where you'll have very icy piano melodies playing off against Rock Against Communism style soulful backing riffs that are then tied off with some nice palm muted guitar riffs. And the lead guitar, I can't mention that enough when you're talking about Goatmoon. That's kind of what sets them apart. They're almost sort of like a Finnish counterpart to Vindir in that sense. This song, Vaheropisen Tuvarovsi, which I'm sure I fucking butchered, comes toward the end of the album, and it's kind of a deep cut, but I feel like it really demonstrates all that Goatmoon is capable of. The guitars right here, does this remind you of anything?
제가 V앱을 너무 안 한다고.
I was thinking the same thing. Let's fucking play that shit for the folks at home, huh?
촬영했던 거 하다 보면은.
So this right here is the 7-inch single by the Norwegian band Streed. Highly underrated, rather unknown because they only did demos in 7 inches way back in the 90s before the main guy killed himself.
Oh no!
I always thought their style was interesting because they were taking this very Burzum style ambient black metal but putting it into like a much more riff-based song structure. Anyways, that Goatmoon song kind of made me think of that. I just thought that was interesting. It's a pretty obscure band to take influence from, but fuck, they did it. You see what I mean? This is very Street sounding right here, albeit much less despondent and dark and a little bit more uplifting. Speaking of uplifting, check this shit out. That's some downright Moon Sorrow style clean vocals, doubling up on that clean guitar melody from earlier. Great stuff, very, very soulful in the way that only the best of black metal can be. Back into that more Street style part. Really love the piano there too. That's a unique thing to add to the sort of Street style black metal. Almost a little bit shoegazy, but not in a gay way. Lead guitar here is great. Very simple, and yet very emotionally powerful. And it makes for, great black metal songwriting, which is what Goatmoon is all about. That's why Goatmoon is one of my favorite modern black metal bands, and one of the few modern bands that I think kind of stands up well against the classics of the early 90s. Plus, they got these awesome clean vocals, and they got those wacky folky boinger noises. I mean, what's not to like? And what's not to like about Voitto tai Valhalla, which in some ways, you can argue about whether or not it's the best Goatmoon album, but it's probably like the definitive Goatmoon album in terms of showing off everything Black Goat's songwriting is capable of. And skipping it in my original Goatmoon overview was a pretty major crime.
And I don't like that.
So hopefully I have ameliorated this deficiency. If you're looking to get into Goatmoon, if you're not really familiar with them, this might actually be the album to start with. Or you could do what I do and start with fucking Varjot or finish Steel Storm. Look, all the albums are good. Alright, it's a good fucking band. They're solo project or whatever. Anyways, check them out and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.
No! Give them break! I can't